The sky has always been a mystery. It stretches without end, beyond mountains and seas. Long before maps, it was the first horizon. Humans looked up and felt both small and infinite. Among the drifting clouds, myths began to breathe. They told of gods who watched from above, of a king whose voice was thunder itself. His name was Zeus, ruler of the endless sky. But his realm was more than storms and lightning. It was the canvas of eternity, ever-changing, ever true. Every sunrise painted his promise anew. Every night carried his quiet guardianship. The stars were not distant fires, but companions. Each constellation whispered a story, timeless and clear. The wind carried voices of mortals' hopes and fears. Zeus listened, not with anger, but with patience. His sky was a mirror for the human soul. It held balance, harmony, and gentle reminders. This is the story of the eternal sky, a journey into wonder, where myth becomes living breath. In the beginning, the sky was silent. It stretched vast and endless, waiting for its guardian. From the whispers of time, a keeper was chosen. His name was Zeus, child of promise and destiny. He was not born to rule through fear or sword. He was born to hold balance in the heavens. The cosmos itself shaped him with patience. Each star gave him wisdom. Each cloud gave him breath. The winds carried their secrets into his heart. He learned to listen before he learned to command. Above all, he learned that power is harmony. The sky was not empty. It was alive. Every ray of light carried a story. Every shadow told of a lesson hidden within. Zeus grew with the rhythm of the elements. The rain became his gentle touch on the earth. The thunder became his steady voice of reminder. The lightning became sparks of inspiration for humankind. From childhood, Zeus felt the weight of eternity. He understood the world below, looked up in wonder. They searched the sky for answers they could not speak. He would become the guardian of those silent prayers. He was entrusted not only with clouds and storms. He was entrusted with the dreams of mortals. Each breath of wind carried voices of hope. Each shifting cloud bore fragments of memory. Zeus listened as if the world were a hymn. He kept its verses safe in his eternal heart. The sky was not a throne of gold. It was a mantle, woven from light and silence. It demanded patience more than strength. It asked him to be a listener before a ruler. Zeus embraced the call with quiet dignity. He stood between the cosmos and the earth, neither wholly divine nor wholly distant. He was the bridge where mortal longing met divine care. The stars above became his companions and guides. They reminded him that time is eternal. They whispered that every beginning has meaning. The sun taught him to shine without demand. The moon taught him to glow without fear. The clouds taught him to drift, yet never lose form. Every lesson became part of his soul. He grew not as a conqueror, but as a steward. The eternal sky was his gift and his duty. He learned that storms were not destruction. They were renewal, cleansing, and quiet beginnings. He saw that lightning was not terror. It was clarity, revealing hidden truths in darkness. He felt thunder not as anger. It was presence, a heartbeat echoing through the heavens. All the while, the earth below watched. Children pointed to the clouds with awe. Travelers measured time by the dance of stars. Farmers prayed for gentle rain and fertile soil. Poets searched the horizon for inspiration. Zeus was never absent from their gaze. Even in silence, they knew he was there. For his sky was not distant, but near. It touched every leaf, every wave, every stone. It wrapped the world in its boundless embrace. And so, Zeus became not only king of gods, he became the eternal keeper of balance. The sky was his kingdom, but also his promise to hold the earth with care, to watch with love, to remind mortals that they were never alone. This was the birth of the sky's keeper, the story not of conquest, but of guardianship, a tale not of fear, but of harmony. And from that moment, the heavens would never be silent. They would sing forever with the presence of Zeus. The clouds were never silent above the earth. They drifted like ancient travelers across the sky. Each one carried secrets gathered from the world below. The shepherd's song, the sailor's prayer, the poet's sigh, all were hidden within the soft folds of white mist. Zeus knew the clouds were not mere vapor or rain. They were keepers of memory, voices of humanity. When mortals spoke to the heavens, the clouds listened. They rose slowly, lifting every unspoken word upward. Zeus welcomed them as messengers of mortal hearts. Through them, he heard whispers no ear could catch, the laughter of children, bright and fleeting as sunlight, the hopes of farmers, waiting for gentle rain to fall, the dreams of wanderers, gazing at horizons unknown, even the silent tears of those who prayed in shadows. Every cloud was a page in an endless book. Together, they wrote the history of longing and love. When they gathered heavy and dark, Zeus understood. It was not anger, but the weight of human sorrow. He shaped the rain to fall softly upon the earth, each drop a reminder that sorrow could be released. When the clouds broke open, new light always followed. The rainbow stretched across the sky as a reply. It was Zeus's way of answering without words, a promise that despair would never be eternal. But clouds were not only carriers of sadness. Many drifted like songs, light and joyful in the air. They carried laughter from festivals and bright celebrations. They brought hymns of gratitude sung in temples. They lifted vows spoken under the sunday. Each joyful cloud shimmered with warmth and color. Zeus cherished them, letting them dance freely above. He gave them winds to carry their happiness farther. He spread them wide so every land could share. To him, clouds were not just weather. They were the breath of humankind rising skyward. They showed him the pulse of the world below, the shifting moods of nations, families, and souls. Through clouds, he remained close, though unseen, for they touched mortals as gently as he could, a shade on a weary traveler's path, a cool blessing on fields of golden wheat, a drifting companion for those who journeyed alone. Mortals rarely realized the gift of these veils. They looked up and saw only shapes and shadows. Yet within each form lay an untold story. Zeus could read them as one reads an ancient script. He saw destinies forming in their slow procession. He felt courage rising in their towering shapes. He sensed peace flowing in their quiet drift. Every horizon became a canvas of mortal life, clouds painting what words could never fully say. To Zeus, their language was pure and sacred. He never judged the prayers they carried. He never turned away from the tears they held. All voices mattered in the chorus of the sky. All hopes found a place in the folds of mist. This was why he guarded the clouds so carefully. He guided their paths with winds both strong and soft. He placed them where their presence was most needed. Over parched lands, they became rivers of rain. Over weary hearts, they became veils of comfort. Over joyous gatherings, they became crowns of light. Each cloud a reminder of connection unbroken, a thread between mortals and the eternal sky. For as long as clouds drifted, the bond endured. Zeus was never distant, never deaf to their song. He walked beside every mortal through the sky above. Thus, the clouds became the voice of the world. Not in thunder, not in lightning, but in breath. They spoke softly, endlessly, and Zeus listened. This was the gift of the clouds to the eternal sky. The voice of thunder was never meant to frighten. It was the steady breath of the sky, calm yet firm. Zeus used it not as a weapon, but as a guide. Each rumble echoed like a reminder to the world. Mortals heard it and paused, their hearts listening closer. It was as if the sky spoke without words. Not every voice is soft, yet all can be kind. Thunder carried lessons that silence could not hold. When storms gathered, mortals often feared the roar, but Zeus wished them to hear wisdom within the sound. For thunder was the language of truth in motion. It reminded wanderers that the sky was alive. It called to the weary that change was near. It sang to the hopeful that courage would return. Every roll across the heavens carried a meaning. Some were gentle murmurs like a teacher's breath. Others were deep, long echoes that stirred reflection. In every tone, Zeus spoke of balance and care. Mortals often wondered if thunder was anger. Yet in truth, it was never wrath, only presence. The presence of a guardian who never left. Even in silence, his voice was ready to return. The hills amplified his words across valleys wide. The oceans carried his echoes across distant shores. Travelers beneath foreign skies still felt his call. For thunder was not bound by mountain or sea. It was the sky's reminder that all were connected. A shepherd in the field and a sailor at sea both heard the same rolling voice of guidance. It bound them together in unseen unity. The voice of thunder was timeless and patient. It waited for mortals to pause and listen. It asked for attention, not fear, not trembling. When Zeus spoke through thunder, he taught remembrance. He taught mortals to look beyond their own steps, to see themselves as part of a greater song. The thunder was the rhythm of that eternal hymn, a beat older than nations, older than kings. It spoke of beginnings and of endless continuity. In gentle seasons, thunder rolled like distant drums. Low and steady, it lulled the earth to rest. In turbulent skies, it rang out more boldly, not as punishment, but as an urgent call, a reminder that storms cleanse and renewal follows. Zeus trusted mortals to hear the message within. Some wrote songs inspired by the rolling sound. Others built temples, echoing with its rhythm. Children laughed, counting between lightning and thunder. Even in play, they honored its steady pattern. Every culture gave it names, meanings, and myths, but all agreed thunder was the voice of beyond. The eternal sky spoke through its rolling waves. Zeus let it carry across time without fading, for thunder did not age, nor did it rest. It was the eternal teacher of the heavens. And though mortals could not always understand, they felt its weight deep in their hearts. They knew they were heard, even if unseen. That the sky above was more than empty air. It was alive, attentive, filled with a guardian's care. When they trembled at the sound, Zeus listened. When they smiled at its rhythm, he rejoiced. The voice of thunder was not distant, but near, always watching, always guiding, always true. And so mortals learned, through sound and silence, that Zeus's voice would never abandon the earth. A promise spoken not in words, but in echoes. A vow carried in every roll of thunder. This was not noise, but music of eternity, the sky itself breathing through the voice of Zeus. Lightning was never born to destroy. It was the spark of vision, quick and radiant. Zeus shaped it as a gift, not a weapon, a sudden flame that pierced the fabric of night. Mortals looked upward, startled by its brilliance. But within that flash lay hidden inspiration. Every bolt was a message from the eternal sky, not to frighten, but to awaken and remind. Ideas often come like lightning, sudden and clear. They strike the mind as light strikes the horizon. Poets felt words rising as thunderclouds gathered. Artists saw colors unfold in each blazing streak. Inventors dreamed new paths with every flash. Zeus knew mortals needed sparks to guide them. The world below often grew weary and lost. He offered lightning as a lantern in the storm. It showed the way through confusion and doubt. The brilliance cut through shadows of despair. It told dreamers that even darkness could shine. For light is not absence of night, but courage within it. Mortals came to see lightning as a fierce beauty. Children watched in awe from their windows. Travelers lifted eyes as skies burst into silver fire. Each flash was short, yet its memory lingered. Zeus smiled at their wonder, for it was his gift. Lightning was the handwriting of the sky itself. Lines of light drawn across a canvas of storm. Each line vanished quickly, yet left deep impressions. Mortals spoke of visions received in those moments. A farmer dreaming of fertile fields renewed. A scholar finding clarity in his restless study. A lonely heart remembering that brilliance exists. Zeus listened to these stories with quiet pride. He knew his gift reached even the smallest lives. For the eternal sky does not choose only kings. It sends light to the humble, the forgotten, the quiet. Every mind deserves the touch of sudden clarity. Every soul deserves to feel inspired and seen. Lightning carried not anger, but creativity unbound. It leapt like a dancer across the heavens. It sang like fire breaking chains of silence. It whispered, "Awake, your thoughts are alive." The world below would never remain stagnant. As long as lightning shone, imagination endured. It reminded mortals that brilliance can be fleeting. Yet even a moment of light can change eternity. Zeus loved the paradox of lightning's nature. It was fierce, yet tender in its purpose. It vanished, yet left eternal marks behind. Mortals feared storms, yet longed for the flash. For in it they saw themselves brief, bright, meaningful. The eternal sky mirrored the human soul. Clouds carried voices, thunder gave lessons, and lightning revealed the power of sudden vision. Together they wove the tapestry of divine care. Zeus guarded this balance with devotion. He knew that too much light could blind, so he let it come only in measured strokes. Just enough to guide, never enough to burn. Mortals learned patience through the waiting. They knew lightning would return when needed most. It became a symbol of hope in the darkest hours. Even when shadows pressed heavy upon their lives, they remembered the flash that would always come, the eternal promise that light cannot be lost. Zeus kept this vow written across the storms. Every spark was his message of faith to the earth, every streak a reminder that creativity lives within all. The eternal sky was never silent, never empty. It spoke through lightning and dazzling whispers, and mortals, raising their eyes, felt awakened, not by fear, but by vision, by inspiration, by love. Thus, the dance of lightning became sacred, a rhythm of flashes across eternity's canvas. And Zeus, watching above, continued to guide, not with chains, not with commands, but with light. The throne of Zeus was not forged in gold. It was not carved from marble or jeweled with gems. It was a seat woven from the fabric of eternity. The winds shaped its form with graceful patience. The stars poured their light into its foundation. The clouds carried it high above mortal sight. It stood not as a symbol of dominance, but of balance. A throne meant for wisdom, not conquest or command. Zeus ascended this seat with quiet reverence, for he knew its weight was not in luxury, but in duty. Each breath of the sky whispered through its edges. Each ray of dawn polished its timeless surface. When he sat upon it, the heavens grew calm. The constellations turned their gaze to listen. The moon bowed softly, reflecting silver honor. Even the sun dimmed its fire in respect. The eternal throne was more than a seat. It was the meeting point of heaven and earth. Every prayer lifted by clouds passed through it. Every spark of lightning flowed beneath its arms. Every roll of thunder resonated in its frame. It was alive with the rhythm of the cosmos. Mortals imagined it as towering and grand, but in truth, it was subtle, almost unseen. Its strength was woven in silence and stillness. A quiet reminder that power is most true in calm. Zeus never claimed the throne for pride. He claimed it to serve as guardian of harmony. When he rested there, he became part of the sky, not above it, but within its eternal breath. The throne cradled him as the world spun below. From it he could see the dance of nations. He saw children laugh beneath blooming trees. He saw elders tell stories beneath fading suns. He saw the fragile beauty of mortal life. The throne gave him perspective, not distance. It kept him connected to the flow of existence. Each storm that rose was felt in its pulse. Each whisper of wind brushed across its surface. It was less a chair than a living covenant, a promise of balance between divine and mortal. Mortals never touched it, yet they felt its influence. Temples were built in its honor, carved in stone, but none could match the throne of the sky, for it was not built by hands, but by eternity. Legends say the throne shimmered with starlight, that those who dreamed deeply could glimpse its glow. Children claimed to see it in clear night skies, their innocent eyes closer to truth than reason. The throne was not hidden. It was everywhere. In the sunrise, in the moon's silver arc, in the stillness before a storm's first cry, in the rainbow stretched after heavy rains. It was the throne of remembrance and promise. Zeus cherished it not for its majesty, but for its message. That leadership is not to rule, but to serve. That strength lies in patience, not in power alone. The eternal throne bore witness to his vow, a vow to never abandon the earth below, A vow to keep balance through day and night. A vow to listen to every voice carried skyward. And so, when mortals gazed at the heavens, they did not see gold or jeweled magnificence. They saw the calm of a guardian at rest. They felt the steadiness of eternity watching. The throne was both anchor and compass. It held Zeus steady and guided his gaze. It reminded him of why he reigned at all, not for himself, but for the fragile and the strong, for the laughter, the tears, the dreams of mortals. Thus the eternal throne of Zeus endured, unseen yet present, silent yet resounding, a seat not of power, but of everlasting care. The constellations were not scattered by chance. They were stories etched into the skin of night. Each cluster carried whispers of memory and myth. Zeus guided their placement with gentle intention. He knew mortals needed maps beyond the earth, maps that led not to places, but to meaning. The sky became their library, vast and alive. Every star was a page, every constellation a tale. The Great Bear stretched across the northern dome. It reminded mortals of courage in wandering paths. The twins stood side by side in shimmering light. They told of loyalty and bonds that never break. The lion blazed proudly with golden stars. It spoke of strength, softened by wisdom. The swan glided across the silver night. Its wings sang of beauty and freedom. Zeus placed these images with patient care. He drew them not for himself, but for mortals. For he knew humans were seekers of stories, and the night sky was the grandest stage of all. Children looked upward and dreamed of heroes. Sailors charted their course by guiding stars. Farmers read the seasons in shifting constellations. The heavens became both compass and teacher. But more than that, they became comfort. When mortals felt lost, they raised their eyes. There above was the same map of light, unchanging, eternal, steady in its glow. Zeus loved watching their wonder unfold. He saw lovers trace constellations with gentle hands. He saw poets weave verses from starry patterns. He saw wise elders tell tales beneath them. The constellations were not distant, but close. They bridged mortal hearts to the eternal sky. Each star a reminder that no one was alone. The stories in the sky belonged to everyone, not just to kings or priests, but to children too. Zeus gave them freely, without boundary or price. A universal gift, endless and untamed. Mortals added their own tales over time. New heroes found homes among the stars. New legends stretched across the dark canvas. Zeus welcomed these additions with a smile, for the sky was not fixed, but living, a dialogue between gods and mortals forever. The constellations were threads of connection, binding heaven and earth in shimmering lines. When storms passed and skies cleared bright, mortals looked up and felt steadiness return. They saw Orion's belt cutting across darkness. They saw the Pleiades shimmer in clustered dance. They saw shapes that reminded them of home. The eternal sky was never silent, never still. Its stars pulsed with unspoken guidance. Each night was a new page of illumination. Zeus himself often traced them in silence, not as ruler, but as a guardian of memory. He listened to their quiet hum of eternity, and in their glow, he too felt peace. The constellations taught patience to mortals. For stars move slowly, seasons shift in time. They reminded people that change has rhythm, that endings are not loss, but transformation. Mortals carried these lessons into their lives. They planted, traveled, and loved with hope, knowing the stars would always return to guide. Zeus was content with this eternal exchange. He gave light, and mortals gave stories in return. Together they filled the canvas of the sky, a collaboration that transcended ages and empires. Even today, when eyes lift to the heavens, the same constellations whisper softly above. They remind us of ancient promises still alive, that we are dreamers connected by light, that the eternal sky is our shared heritage. A story written in stars, watched over by Zeus, forever shining, forever guiding, forever true. The seasons were threads woven into the fabric of time. Zeus did not command them with force, but with harmony. Spring rose gently, carrying blossoms in its breath. It was a time of beginnings, of hope renewed. Mortals planted seeds beneath warming skies. They trusted that the earth would answer with life. The eternal sky watched with tender delight. Zeus smiled as flowers bent toward the Sunday. He knew spring's gift was not just growth, but courage. The courage to begin again after long winters. Then summer came, bold and golden in its song. Fields swayed heavy with grain and fruit. Children laughed beneath endless bright days. The warmth reminded mortals of abundance. Zeus let the sun linger with gentle patience. He knew joy needed room to ripen fully. Yet balance demanded that summer must yield. Autumn arrived with colors of fire and gold. Leaves danced in spirals, whispering farewell. Mortals gathered harvest with grateful hands. They feasted, sang, and honored the turning year. Zeus loved autumn's quiet wisdom most of all. It taught that endings could glow with beauty, that letting go was not sorrow, but grace. And then came winter, silent and profound. Snow-covered fields in blankets of stillness. The air grew crisp, and nights deepened long. Mortals huddled near fires, sharing stories. They found warmth in one another's presence. Zeus knew winter was not a punishment. It was rest, a pause in the cycle of life. For even the earth needs time to dream. And mortals, too, learned patience in its hush. The seasons circled endlessly, never faltering. Each carried lessons woven into their rhythm. Spring whispered of renewal, summer of joy. Autumn spoke of gratitude, winter of rest. Zeus kept them in balance with gentle care. Too much sun, and earth would wither. Too much cold, and life would fade. Harmony was the heart of the eternal sky. Mortals celebrated this cycle in their festivals. They built rituals to honor each turning. Songs of planting, songs of harvest, songs of rest. Children learned these rhythms in laughter. Elders passed them on in hushed wisdom. The seasons became not just time, but meaning. They reminded mortals of their place in eternity. Zeus looked down with pride on these rituals. He knew the earth was not his alone to shape. It belonged to mortals who lived its rhythms. They carried the seasons in their hearts. And so, the eternal sky was not distant. It was felt in every bloom, every leaf, every flake. Mortals lived within its breath each day. They understood that life was a circle, not a straight path, but a wheel turning. The seasons spun like constellations in motion, each one brief, yet eternal in return. And Zeus, seated upon his silent throne, watched the dance of time with gentle devotion. He knew the seasons were his quiet promise, a vow that life would always continue, that after every ending, a new dawn would rise. And mortals, lifting their eyes to the sky, understood this promise in their own hearts. They trusted the cycle, and so they lived with hope. For as long as the seasons turned in harmony, the eternal sky of Zeus would endure. The winds of the earth were voices of the eternal sky. They did not howl with anger, but spoke with character. Each wind carried a soul, a story, a lesson. Zeus gave them freedom to move as they wished, for they were not servants but companions of the sky. The north wind was bold, sharp, and clear. It swept across mountains with crisp determination. Mortals felt its sting, but also its clarity. It reminded them of strength born from challenge. The south wind was warm, gentle, and kind. It carried scents of blossoms and distant seas. Mortals welcomed it with open arms in spring. It whispered of growth, comfort, and renewal. The east wind was playful, restless, and curious. It stirred leaves, chased clouds, and teased children. Mortals saw it as a messenger of change. It sang of journeys and horizons yet unseen. The west wind was calm, steady, and wise. It carried sunsets in its glowing breath. Mortals trusted it as a guide for endings. It taught acceptance and peace with closing days. Zeus cherished these winds like his own kin. He never bound them, only guided their balance. For freedom was their essence and gift to mortals. They wove harmony through valleys and fields. Farmers knew when to sow by their whispers. Sailors read their moods upon restless seas. Children played in their dance on grassy hills. The winds connected all life with invisible threads. each breeze a reminder of Zeus's eternal care. Mortals sometimes feared storms when winds clashed, but even storms were not curses, only balance. The sky released tension so Earth could breathe again. Zeus ensured storms never lasted forever. Always the calm would follow, steady and sure. Mortals learned patience from these tempests. They learned to bend, not to break, in the gale. For winds taught resilience more than fear. They showed that motion is life itself. Stillness too long is not peace, but stagnation. The eternal sky flowed, with breath unending. Mortals began to name and honor the winds. Songs were sung to thank their restless care. Prayers were whispered before setting sail. Children laughed as they chased kites in spring. Elders told tales of winds as wise spirits. Zeus listened to these voices with quiet pride, for he knew the winds were true companions, not bound to rule but to nurture and guide. Each breeze that touched mortal skin was divine. Each gust across fields was a blessing. The winds were not seen, but deeply felt. They carried both mystery and intimacy. Mortals often lifted their arms to the breeze. They felt connection, unseen yet certain. And in that touch was the presence of Zeus. The eternal sky spoke softly through their breath, a gentle reminder that life is movement, that every change carries hidden gifts, that endings are followed by beginnings anew. The winds danced endlessly across the ages. They shaped deserts, forests, rivers, and seas. They carved mountains and polished stones. They carried seeds to distant resting places. And in their endless work, life endured. Mortals lived within their music each day. Their hair tousled, their sails filled, their voices lifted. The winds belonged to no one, yet to everyone. They were gifts without chains or borders. Zeus loved them most for their wild freedom, for in them he saw a reflection of eternity, not fixed, but flowing, boundless, and alive. And so, when mortals felt a breeze upon their face, they were not merely touched by air. They were brushed by the eternal sky itself, a tender sign that Zeus was near, not distant, but present in every breath. The winds carried his eternal promise that life, like them, would never cease to move. The stars had always been jewels in the crown of the eternal sky. They glimmered like sparks of hope across the vast night. Mortals gazed upward, dreaming of stories within their light. Each constellation was a whisper of memory, not chance. For Zeus shaped them as gentle reminders for all. The great bear guided wanderers through forests and plains. The hunter reminded mortals of courage and pursuit. The maiden carried lessons of patience and kindness. The twins spoke of unity, loyalty, and friendship. The lion roared silently of bravery and pride. Each star carried both guidance and comfort for mortals. When children asked their parents about the night sky, stories unfolded that carried warmth across generations. Zeus listened with quiet joy to these mortal tales, for he had set the stars to inspire hearts, not to command, but to kindle curiosity and wonder. The stars were not distant, they were bridges. Bridges between the eternal and the fleeting, between Zeus's gaze and the mortal journey below. Sailors trusted them upon restless seas at night. Farmers noted their dance to guide the seasons. Lovers promised eternity beneath their gentle glow. Elders found peace in their unchanging constancy. The stars were steady, but never lifeless. They shimmered with stories, alive in their silence. Zeus never sought to hide their mysteries fully, for mystery itself was a gift to mortals. It urged them to seek, to learn, to dream, to believe there is always more beyond reach. The eternal sky was filled with silent teachers, not gods demanding worship, but lights offering wisdom. Mortals began to weave myths from their glimmer. Songs told of heroes immortalized in the sky. Poets painted verses of love beneath their gaze. Travelers told tales of stars guiding their journeys. Each story wove into the fabric of culture. And Zeus, high above, let them grow freely. For creation was not only his, but theirs too. The stars became more than markers of night. They were keepers of dreams, of memory, of hope. When mortals felt lost, they turned to the stars. When they longed, they whispered wishes upward. The eternal sky received each one with care. Not every wish was granted, but none ignored, for the act of wishing gave mortals strength. Strength to endure, to strive, to believe again. The stars reminded them of infinite possibility, of how smallness was not weakness, but wonder. Zeus cherished this balance deeply in his heart. Mortals needed not answers, but the spark to ask. They needed not certainty, but courage to continue. And the stars gave them exactly that. Even in darkest nights, light remained above, silent, patient, eternal in its gentle glow. Some nights, mortals gathered in quiet fields. They lay upon grass and traced constellations. They told stories, laughed, and held each other. And in that simple act, the sky was alive. Zeus looked upon them with eternal tenderness. He saw not worshippers, but companions in wonder. The stars belonged to both gods and mortals. Shared light, shared stories, shared eternity. The eternal sky was not distant, but present, in each spark, in each dream, in each gaze. And so long as mortals lifted their eyes, they would always find a friend in the stars, a reminder that they were never alone. For the eternal sky was vast, but kind, and Zeus, within its endless glow, was near. The eternal sky was not only light and wind, it was silence, a vast stillness that spoke softly. Zeus cherished silence as much as thunder and flame, for silence carried truths that words could never hold. Mortals often feared silence, thinking it emptiness, yet within it, Zeus placed his gentlest wisdom. In still moments, mortals heard their own hearts. They felt the rhythm of life beating quietly. Silence was a mirror, reflecting both joy and sorrow. It was the pause between breaths, the calm in storms. Zeus shaped silence as a sanctuary for souls, a place where thought could bloom without distraction. When shepherds sat alone beneath the stars, they found comfort in the hush of the night. When travelers paused in deserts with endless sands, the silence gave them courage to continue. When elders closed their eyes in fading light, silence wrapped them in peace like a gentle cloak. Zeus did not fill silence with commands. He allowed mortals to discover meaning themselves. For wisdom found in quiet is wisdom that lasts. Temples were built with spaces left unspoken, courtyards where the wind whispered but voices stilled. In those sacred spaces, mortals breathed deeply. They remembered they were part of something vast. Even without thunder, they felt the eternal sky. Silence was not absence, but profound presence. Mortals slowly learned to trust its embrace. They saw it in dawn before birds began song. They felt it in snowfall muffling the earth. They touched it in the ocean's deep lull. Each silence was different, yet all were divine. Children asked, "Why does silence matter?" And parents answered, "Because in quiet we listen, not only to gods, but to ourselves, to life." Zeus smiled when he heard these gentle lessons, for mortals understood more than they realized. The eternal sky was not distant, but woven into every silence between heartbeat and breath. Zeus often walked unseen among the quiet places, not to test mortals, but to join them. He too found peace in their shared stillness. For even the ruler of the sky sought calm. Silence connected God and mortal without a word. It was the purest bond, unbroken and endless. And so mortals began to honor silence itself, not with noise, but with reverent pause, with candles lit, with eyes closed, with peace. Zeus blessed them through these moments unseen. He offered no lightning, no roar, only presence. Mortals began to see silence as holy ground, a temple without walls, open to all. No priest required, no offering demanded, only the courage to be still and listen. From silence rose compassion and understanding. From silence grew patience and humility. From silence came strength, softer than stone. Zeus knew this was his greatest gift. Not the thunder, not the stars, not the winds, but the quiet that allowed all things to be. The eternal sky was vast, yet never empty. Its silence was full of promise and care. Mortals carried this truth into their lives. They paused before speaking, choosing kindness. They listened before judging, choosing compassion. They rested before striving, choosing balance. And in these choices, they honored Zeus. For the eternal sky was not far above. It was within them, as breath, as silence. And so, in every still night, every dawn, mortals remembered they were never alone. The silence of Zeus held them always, not as subjects, but as companions of eternity. The eternal sky whispered, even in its hush, "You are part of me, and I of you. Together, in silence, we are infinite."